This video I'm going to go through the entire process of creating a custom end grain butcher block. I start by measuring out the width of my cutting board. I head to the miter saw and make my cuts. Now that I have my 4 pieces, I head to the table saw to rip one in half to make my end grain pattern. Once my board is ripped, I proceed to glue up the boards on my parallel clamps. You can skip this part if you don't want to watch the glue up. There are tons of videos on this on YouTube. I like to apply glue on both edges of the boards to ensure maximum coverage, but this is not necessary. Once everything is glued, I make sure that the boards are 90 degrees so I don't have to waste material when I trim the glue up on the table saw. I clamp the pieces and wipe off the excess glue to save time on sanding. I let the board dry overnight and remove the board from the clamps. Then I sand down the leftover dry glue. Once everything is sanded, I secure my board on my homemade sled. I use the sled as a 90-degree reference as my board won't be perfectly square on the table saw fence. Once on the table saw, I make my reference cut, then proceed to make the rest of the cuts. The distance of the fence will determine the final thickness of my end grain butcher block. I check all the pieces to see the pattern. I clean up the cut pieces with hand sanding prior to gluing them together. I repeat the same process as before to make the final glue up. I let the board dry overnight and remove the clamps. I use a hand plane to remove the dry glue, as sanding at this stage would take forever. Once the dry glue has been removed, I sand the board down with 80 grit. Once the sanding is finished, I make the first cut with my sled, then check to make sure the reference cut is square. I then make my final 3 cuts to bring my cutting board to its final dimension. proceed with the final sanding, starting with 80 grit and working my way up to 220. I head to my router table to make the grooves using 2 reference lines I marked on my table. One line is my start and the other is where I end. I make a groove on all 4 sides. I smooth out the groove with some hand sanding. Then proceed to marking out the locations of my rubber feet. Once all 4 feet are located, I drill pilot holes so the screws would be easier to drive into the hard maple. I secure the feet with screws. I use walrus oil I picked up at my local woodworking store and proceed to apply it to the board. I use a shop towel to move the oil around, making sure it's even, and I allow the oil to seep into the wood. I turn the board around and repeat the underside. Finally, I make a final wipe to the top and the end grain butcher block is complete. Thank you for watching.